Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into an absolutely wild story of international espionage. One that started not with a bang, but with, well, a bean.
So how in the world did a simple bowl of hummus kick off a global conspiracy? I mean, we're talking pastry, pedicures, and weaponized turtles. It sounds completely made up, right? Well, let's get into it. Because this bizarre sequence of events all started at a quiet diplomatic party with a simple dip.
All right, let's set the scene. Our story begins in the sleepy little town of Falafel Bay, Oregon. And at the center of it all is a guy named Harold Jenkins. He's just a local caterer, but his prize-winning hummus, it's about to become the most wanted condiment on the planet.
Now, you gotta meet the players here. This unlikely crew got nicknamed the Dip Diplomats. And how did they all get roped into this? Well, a super important USB drive containing something called the quantum quill, a revolutionary encryption algorithm, just vanishes from a party. And guess where it was last seen? Yep, right next to Harold's bowl of hummus.
And what happens next is just pure chaos. We're talking a 72-hour, 1,200-mile chase. But forget Mission Impossible, this was more like a comedy of errors. You had elite agents from the CIA, MI6, you name it, trying to pull off these daring extractions and just failing spectacularly. I mean, one guy slips on lemon juice, another operative disguised as a ferret gets taken out by a cloud of paprika. It was a total mess.
And this quote from Harold pretty much sums up the entire vibe of this chase. The whole thing doesn't end in some big shootout. Nope. It ends with a quiet donut-fueled surrender at a Tim Hortons in Canada. And the punchline? The real kicker? The quantum quill was never even in the hummus. An agent had just misplaced it in his sock drawer. Seriously.
Okay, so you'd think the story ends there, right? Wrong. Just when everyone thinks the hummus fiasco is over, a brand new player steps onto the scene. And these guys are different. We're talking about a secret society of elite French pastry chefs called Les Maîtres du Beurre Doré.
So this croissant cabal, as they were called, was seriously not happy. They were convinced that Harold's hummus was just a cheap knockoff of their own ancient super-secret way of hiding data, which, get this, involved baking code into the thousands of flaky layers of a perfect croissant. Their goal? Nothing less than total global financial domination.
So how do they respond? They literally attack Harold's victory parade back in his hometown. And their weapons? They're like something out of a baker's fever dream. Their go-to gadget was the Burr Blaster, basically a weaponized pastry bag that shoots butter at high pressure to make everything super slippery and gum up logs.
But our diplomats weren't just gonna sit there and take it. They had their own quirky, clever gadgets. Theo, the librarian, he rigs his e-reader to project these holographic recipes, and it actually worked. It tricked the cabal's croissant-shaped drones into dive-bombing stacks of book cooks. You just can't make this stuff up.
And just look at how fast things went completely off the rails. I mean, look at this timeline. One day you've got a surrender over coffee. The very next day there's a raid at a bakery. Then drone geese are attacking an airport. And by day 4, it's a full-on clash in a national park. The whole situation just spiraled out of control in like 96 hours.
All right, hold on, because just when you think this story can't possibly get any weirder, it does. The plot takes this absolutely surreal turn with the arrival of Velvet Soul Queen Sinclair. She's a local adult film star and, as it happens, an old flame of Leela, our yoga enthusiast.
Now, Velvet is a big deal in her own world. She's got 2.7 million subscribers. And here's how she gets pulled in. After a close call with the cabal, Leela goes to visit Velvet at her spa. And while she's getting a foot soak, the high-tech foot bath starts spitting out stock market data. Turns out, a little piece of the quantum quill algorithm had somehow gotten into the machine. And just like that, the Soul Queen and her massive fan base are thrown right into the middle of this spy thriller.
And this is where things get really interesting, because Velvet's unique background actually gave the team a huge advantage. Her own collection of fetish-themed gadgets were the perfect counter to the croissant cabal. So while the French chefs are launching itching powder from their garters, Velvet's team is deploying autonomous tickle torpedoes and stilettos that spray glittery sleep mist. It was a bizarre, escalating gadget war.
So, where do we go from here? International, of course. The chase for the last few bits of the quantum quill algorithm takes our very strange group of heroes south of the border all the way to a tequila distillery in Cabo San Lucas.
And down in Mexico, oh man, this is where the absurdity hits its absolute peak. So the distillery also happens to be a nesting ground for endangered sea turtles.
The big showdown involves everything from hallucinogenic tequila to drone dragonflies. It all ends when a tiny baby turtle, they nicknamed him Quillion, swallows a crumb of the algorithm, turning him into a living, swimming GPS tracker. The whole thing goes completely viral. The hashtag Tequila Tortuga Takedown.
And you know what's just as wild? The economic impact of all this madness. Take a look at these numbers. Tourism just exploded in every single one of these places. People started booking spy dip tours in Oregon. And get this, turtle espionage egg-watching trips to Cabo went up by 1,200%. Absolutely insane.
All right, so this brings us to the grand finale. The last act of this wild, globe-trotting adventure takes us to neutral territory, Geneva, Switzerland. It's time for a fondue-fueled showdown to finally put an end to all this pastry-based chaos.
So the leader of the croissant cabal, Henri Beaumont, he's cornered. He's trapped in an alpine chalet. He's totally out of moves. So what does he do? He goes for his doomsday device, L'Apocalypse d'Amans. We're talking about a cluster of self-propelled, exploding chocolate croissants, a delicious but deadly last stand.
But in one last perfectly absurd showdown, the diplomats and their bizarre gadgets come to the rescue. Leela uses her vibe vacuum to just suck the chocolate bombs right out of the air. Harold whips up a hummus croissant paste to jam the chalet door shut, and the Grand Mestre has no choice but to come out waving a white waffle of surrender. And the final twist? The quantum quill was a total red herring. The big secrets were just old family recipes all along.
So what's the big takeaway here? This massive global crisis didn't end with bombs and bullets. It ended with treaties. Treaties that set up a whole new kind of world peace, one based on swapping recipes and collaborating on pedicures. Velvet Sinclair actually becomes the official mediator for any future conflicts, and those powerful quill fragments, they were turned into shoe insoles and sold at a charity auction for millions.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought from the most unlikely hero of this whole story, Velvet Sinclair, the Soul Queen who ultimately tipped the scales. It just goes to show you, sometimes the key to global stability isn't about having the biggest weapon, but about having the most fabulous pair of shoes.